welcome to Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, and our guest today is Nick Villaume. He's the CEO and founder of the Dev Department. The Dev Department is an Atlanta-based firm that provides white-label website development services to small graphic design firms. Nick has worked with designers for 15 years as a freelancer developer, helping designers sell, plan, and execute website and web application projects, and he decided to incorporate his business in 2009. Currently, the Dev Department services graphic design clients across the nation, in Europe, and Southeast Asia as well.
Correct. Well, our development's in Southeast Asia.
Okay, so you have developers in Southeast Asia.
We do, yeah. That's where our main development office is.
Okay, great. Nick, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Great.
So Nick, for those of us that are not savvy to tech talk, what does white label mean?
Well, white label is basically behind-the-scenes development. So designers would hire us, and their client doesn't, in many cases, even know that we exist. So we give the appearance that we're repackaging our services for that design firm.
Okay. And who are your clients, and why did you choose your particular market?
Well, our clients are small graphic design firms. And a small graphic design firm is either a freelance graphic designer who works from their home by themselves, or it might be somebody who has a day job and does freelance graphic design on the side. And then it can be a small firm where it's anywhere from 2 to 10 or so employees.
So how do you work with graphic designers in building a website?
It really starts at the sales level. We partner with them very early on to help them win clients, estimate work, plan work, package work for development, and then we guide them through this whole process.
Nick, why would a graphic design firm work with you or a freelancer as opposed to going offshore or something like that?
Well, a lot of them do, and in fact, we actually got our start as the amount of volume that we needed to accommodate increased. We used a lot of offshore labor, and what we quickly discovered is that there's a big difference between finding offshore labor and managing offshore labor. Now, currently, companies like Odesk.com I think they do between 30 and 50 million a year in revenues just from staffing offshore labor. But offshore labor pools are tricky because of the fact that they require very explicit instruction on what needs to be done. For example, our developers in Southeast Asia, we have a lead developer who basically interprets the work for us so that we can pass things to him, and then he works with the developers to explain exactly what needs to be done. There's a difference between designing what is going to be built and determining how it's going to be built. Another area where designers have frequently gone for their web development help has been freelance developers like I used to be. The issue that they run into there, however, is that a freelance developer can only handle really one job at a time. They can do a little bit of work here and a little bit of work there. And what happens is if you find a good developer, you're going to find quickly that the amount of work that you're sending that developer is greater than that developer can do. And so you run into a bottleneck in one direction or another.
If someone wants to hire a web designer to build their website, what advice would you give them?
Well, the first thing I would tell someone is to ask about their staff. Do they have a dedicated staff? Do they have someone who's reliable, who can handle work in volume if it comes in? Another thing I would do is ask them about their worst project experience, because that's a really good gauge as to whether or not somebody's been doing this for a while, because no matter how good you are, you always have a bad project that you can talk about. And if you're an experienced designer or developer, you can talk about it and really kind of tell them what went wrong and explain what you might have done differently with that project or how you've changed the way you do things to accommodate that experience. So that's another thing I'd ask about. Another big area is talking about their portfolio. You know, you get a lot of designers, and we see this a lot in our business, is that designers in school are basically developing a portfolio, and their absolute best work is out there on that portfolio, but that's not necessarily representative of what they have personally done. For example, a lot of designers will come from big firms, and they'll have a portfolio that is representative of the work of that firm as opposed to their own individual work, and you need to understand that there's a lot more than just that individual's work that goes into that process. So the next thing you would ask a designer about when you're interviewing them to build your website would be, what is their process? What process do they use? And part of the dev department is that we teach them a process that works so that they incrementally build and plan a website so they get the best end result. And when they pass the work off to us, the work can be done exactly as the client has requested it, and there's no surprises at the end. So really asking them how their process works and doing a little research on process yourself is a really great way to go.
You have a free certification program. Tell us about that.
Well, we have a free certification program, and the reason that it's free is because basically what we're doing is we're teaching designers to plan websites the way we want them to. So we're not going to make them pay for that. We're going to, it benefits us so much. The certification program, you can sign up on our site, and it's basically just a series of lectures and information that you can read about and take a few tests. What it does is it explains how to interview a client. It goes through a series of questions that you can ask a client when you're interviewing them for a new website project. It talks about some of the things you need to document when you're delivering information to us to quote a job. It also goes through how to propose projects and then gets into the incremental steps that I mentioned earlier about how to plan a website project so that as you go, you can maximize your effort and you don't wind up repeating effort. A lot of, it's a funny thing with developers that they always want to rush into coding and building before they really think about planning. And the same is true with designers very often. They want to start designing something before they really think about what it is. And so it's important to go through those steps, and we teach about those steps in our certification process. Another advantage to this program for graphic designers is publicity. We have a directory on our website of certified designers, and we're building a credentialing system so that as clients begin looking for a designer to build their website, they can go to our site and look and see what designers are certified and how much experience they actually have in building and designing websites. So you can hire someone with a little more confidence because they've completed this program, and then the more work they do with us, the higher their level of certification.
So for graphic designers that are trying to do their own work, what would you advise them?
Well, it's funny because I get like a broken record on this whenever I talk to people, but I have this saying that I heard somewhere that you're either a good fisherman or a good golfer. And basically that means that both are very time-consuming hobbies, and to become good at both is very difficult. And I find that having started back in 1994 doing web development, there was no such thing as a development team. There was a developer, and so I was the judge, jury, and executioner on all of my projects, and I would have to design them and talk to the client and build them. And I found after doing that for about 3 or 4 years that I was mediocre in both areas. And so I sort of had to draw a line in the sand and say, I'm either going to be a developer or I'm going to be a designer and design websites. And I really took to the development side more, so I went that route and pursued that passionately.
If you had one piece of advice to give our viewers about business, you've been in business, like we said, 15 years, what would that advice be?
For me, I would say that the best advice that you can take is to just really think about what is absolutely necessary when you're starting a business. You don't need a fancy office, and you don't need to spend a lot of money on marketing, and just getting out in the community and trying your hardest to be of value to your clients and to your community is the best way to build a business, and everything else sort of works itself out.
Nick, thank you so much for being with us today.
You.
I appreciate your time and your expertise. This is Diane Bogino saying so long till next time on Business Notes.